Money, 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 money. Let's talk about money. Hi friends, welcome to my channel, and today I will take you on a journey on the first step to financial freedom. So let's get started. Ever wondered what an emergency fund is? Well, it's that stash of cash just in case.
I just won $1 million.
It's money you put aside for an emergency. But what is an emergency? Emergencies are different for different people. I classify emergencies as things that happen that I didn't budget for.
Look, this is probably for the best, you know? Independence, taking control of your life.
So, why have an emergency fund? What could possibly happen? Well, if you have funds available for emergencies, it can prevent you into going into debt.
Come on, you can't live off your parents your whole life.
I know that. That's why I was getting married.
Give her a break. It's hard being on your own for the first time.
Why have an emergency fund? What could possibly happen? So let's look at a few examples of emergencies. Your TV breaks. Your laptop breaks. Your phone has been stolen and is not insured. Oops.
You don't have insurance?
Your car breaks and is not insured, or there's a co-payment. A co-payment is basically where the insurance only pays a part of the expense and you need to pay the rest. Or something breaks, fridge, microwave, you name it. And then there's medical expenses. So you might have medical aid, but there are sometimes co-payments or certain expenses that the medical aid doesn't cover. For example, physio appointments or medicine that's not covered by the medical aid, or buying a knee guard because you need a knee guard. There are so many examples of expenses that we needed to pay out of our own pocket. At least we had the emergency fund to cover those expenses. Do you have a few examples in your own life that I didn't mention? Drop it in the comments below. It's not nice, but that's what the emergency fund is for. And then there's also other expenses. Let's say, for example, you have a pet and you don't have pet insurance, or there's a co-payment with the pet insurance. If your dog gets sick and the dog needs medicine or needs to go to the vet, that's also money that need to come from somewhere that you didn't budget for. Maybe you have a home and your home needs urgent maintenance, or something happened and the insurance doesn't cover it, or there's a co-payment. Maybe you need to urgently travel somewhere. For example, a family member is sick, or somebody is getting married and they forgot to invite you. Oh,
You're the only person I knew who lived here in the city.
Who wasn't invited to the wedding?
Oh, I was kind of hoping that wouldn't be an issue.
or let's say you lose your job and you still have rent to pay. When you don't have a regular income, emergency fund is even more important. Let's say you are a freelancer, you work on commission, or you are project based. So you need to save for rainy months because not all months are the same.
So, you guys all have jobs?
Yeah, we all have jobs. See, that's how we buy stuff.
So those are examples of what emergency funds need to be used for. So what are examples of what emergency funds mustn't be used for? Buying takeaways or luxuries, or even groceries that you didn't budget for.
And yet you're surprisingly upbeat.
Well, you would be too if you found Joan and David boots on sale, 50% off.
Oh, how well you know me.
They're my new, I don't need a job, I don't need my parents, I've got great boots.
How'd you pay for them?
Credit card.
So remember, that's why we have a budget. In the budget, we need to budget for the amounts that we pay on rent, groceries, so that we are not surprised when we need to spend that money. An emergency fund is for emergencies. So if, for example, the 1 month you spend more on groceries, you might want to consider increasing that budget amount for the groceries instead of using your emergency fund. But if all else fails, at least you have the emergency fund if, for example, 1 month's groceries are more. But it's not ideal to take it out of the emergency fund.
You can see where you'd have trouble.
So everyone that is dependent on an income needs an emergency fund. So if you still live at home, or you are a university student and you are reliant on your parents to pay for your expenses, then of course you won't have an emergency fund, but your parents will have, hopefully, an emergency fund in case life happens and an emergency occurs and they still need to pay your expenses, your tuition, etc.
Look, Daddy, it's my life. Well, maybe that's my decision. Well, maybe I don't need your money. Wait, I said maybe!
So this highlights an important point. Families need more emergency fund than, for example, a single person. Because if you are a family, then you have people that are dependent on you, and you also might have more expenses than a single person.
Well, it matters to me.
So families tend to have larger emergency funds than single people. But single people still need emergency funds because if you are paying for your own expenses, then emergencies can occur, which will prevent you from being able to pay your expenses.
It's a metaphor, Daddy!
So, how much? Well, experts recommend 3 to 6 months living expenses, 3 months if you're a single person, working up to 6 months if you want a larger buffer to protect yourself. But 3 to 6 months for a single person is ideal. Well, 3 months if you're a single person and have a stable income, 6 months if you're a single person and don't have a stable income.
Guess what?
You got a job?
Are you kidding? I'm trained for nothing.
And then let's say you're married and both of you have stable incomes, then 3 months is more than enough. If you're a family, then you might need to consider raising the buffer to 6 months of living expenses. It is a process to build that stash of cash, so start putting away what you can each month, even if it is a little or a lot.
Or else I'm just gonna get up and go to work.
Then emergencies do occur, so if you use some of the fund, fill it up again as soon as you can. And then there's also the other side. Don't put away too much. Sounds weird, right? Let me explain. 6 months of living expenses is more than enough. So when you start building an emergency fund that has more than 6 months of living expenses, you can rather take that extra money and put it into a savings account or investment account that earns higher interest or higher returns. Or you can invest the money into the S&P 500.
Rich, it's the Visa card people.
Oh, God, ask them what they want.
Could you please tell me what this is in reference to? Yes, hold on. They say there's been some unusual activity on your account.
But I haven't used my card in weeks.
That is the unusual activity.
So when you get to that 6 months of living expenses and you pass that 6 months of living expenses, you would rather want to use that extra cash and invest it at higher returns or higher interest. Because typically, where you put your money for an emergency fund would be a lower interest bearing account than where that extra cash could be invested. So here's the key. Once you've reached your emergency fund target, ideally 3 to 6 months of living expenses, you can gradually shift some additional savings towards investments. This allows you to be prepared for emergencies on the one hand, but also build your wealth over time on the other hand. All about balance. And this phenomenon is called opportunity cost in the finance world or the economics world. It's basically this concept of what can you do with R1? You can, or for example, take that R1 and save it, or take that R1 and spend it. So you have different opportunities what you can do with that R1. So with the emergency fund, as soon as you reach your target, that additional cash, you can decide, do you want to keep it in that lower bearing interest account, so your emergency fund, or do you rather want to invest it and build your growth over time? When to start building that emergency fund? ASAP. Well, as soon as you start earning your own income and are responsible for your own expenses, it is wise to start building your emergency fund.
My first paycheck! Look at the window! There's my name! Hi, me!
It's especially important when you have dependents, so people that are dependent on you. Say, for example, you have children, or you have a spouse that is financially dependent on you in some way, or you are looking after one of your parents financially. It would be wise to increase that emergency buffer. So, where to save your emergency fund or your emergency savings? A high-yield savings account that is easily accessible is the best to save your emergency fund. So, some ideas could be to go to your bank and see what is available there. So, choose the account that has the highest interest rate, but also bear in mind the accessibility. So, When we say accessibility, we mean how easy is it to access that money? Because if you have an emergency, you need your money now. So don't lock in your money for any amount of time if you know that you can have an emergency. There are many options where to put your emergency fund, but here are some considerations when choosing that emergency fund. So what to remember? So 1, remember that it should be easily accessible. Number 2, it should be a safe investment. So don't go into risky investments where you could end up losing all your emergency fund. Remember, the goal with an emergency fund is to protect it, not to grow it necessarily as you would with your other investments. So if your emergency fund grows in capital, it's a nice bonus, but growing your emergency fund. So if your emergency fund grows its capital, say the interest rate is really good, that is great, but it shouldn't be the main goal here. The main goal here should be to protect that emergency savings. Number 3, it would be ideal if where you put your emergency savings also beats inflation. So this might not be always possible with money market instruments, but if you can also beat inflation, it means you are protecting your capital against inflation, which is also a goal. Because if your emergency fund is not being protected against inflation, it means that you're actually losing money in real terms. That means your R1 this year won't be able to buy the same as your R1 or $1 next year. Number 4, you should try and keep your emergency fund savings separate from your normal bank account so that you're not tempted to use it, for non-emergency situations. Number 5, automate your contributions. So if you're only starting now to build your emergency fund, start by automating those contributions so that you don't think about the contributions and end up not contributing and not building your emergency fund. And number 6, if you're only starting now, start small and regular. So I know it might feel overwhelming to build this emergency fund because 3 to 6 months of living expenses is a lot of money. But start small and regular. And when you can, increase that contribution. How to fund your emergency savings. So where's the money going to come from? Well, most people will take it out of their salaries. So budget for the contribution to your fund. For example, let's say you start now on 0 and want to build your emergency fund over the next year, so next 12 months. Then you will ask yourself, what are your monthly living expenses? And times that by 3 to 6, dependent on if you want to put away 3 months of living expenses or 4 or 5 or 6 months living expenses. And then you will divide that by 1 year or 12 months to get the monthly contribution. Let's take an example. So let's say your monthly living expenses are 20,000 Rand or $20,000. And let's say you are single and you have a stable income. So we will times our monthly expenses by 3 to get our total emergency fund. So that will be 60,000 Rand or dollars. So that means if our emergency fund is full, that will be 60,000 Rand or $60,000 in total. So if we start now and want to build it over the next year, that will be 60,000 divided by 12 months, which gives us 5,000 Rand per month or $5,000 per month. So that might be too much for you. So you can build your emergency fund, let's say over 2 or 3 years. Let's say you build it over 2 years, that will be 2,500 Rand or dollars per month, which sounds more realistic. Just note, this assumes that you don't have any emergencies over the next year or two while building that emergency fund. If you have an emergency or emergencies while building that emergency fund, it could be that it might take you a bit longer to build that emergency fund. But remember, that's okay. That's what the emergency fund is for emergencies. So let's say you want to build your emergency fund quicker. Here are some ideas. Firstly, you can go on a no unnecessary spending budget for the next month. That is a mouthful. So basically, just no unnecessary spending for the next month. So that might not be sustainable. So that's why I suggest only doing that for the next month and building your emergency fund quicker in the process. So all the extra savings that you are not spending for the next month, you can put that away towards your emergency fund. So another idea of building your emergency fund quicker, or let's say you just don't have any money in your current budget to fund your emergency fund. You have no space to move in your current salary. You don't have money to put away for the emergency fund. What can you do? Well, A way to do this is picking up a side hustle or 2 or 3, depending on how quick you want to build that emergency fund.
Oh, wish me luck.
What for?
I'm gonna go get one of those job things.
Here are some ideas for flexible side hustles. Remember, side hustles, it's ideal to have it flexible so that you don't feel forced when there are days or weeks that you don't want to do that side hustle. So firstly, ask yourself, what skills do you have? Or what skills can you build? Ideas for side hustles could be Uber driving. It's very flexible. Anybody can do it if you're comfortable with driving. And of course, depending on the area that you live in, because safety can also be an issue. So if you live in a safe city and you're comfortable with driving, this is a nice side hustle to have. Tutoring. So not everybody will feel comfortable with this side hustle, but anybody can tutor a primary school kid if you are passionate about a subject and you're making a difference. Then you also get coaching, athletics, netball, rugby, public speaking, writing, whatever you can think of. If you have a skill, you can coach that skill. And then there are music lessons. If you are talented, why not share the talent and make some money in the process? Then you get dog sitting, house sitting, babysitting, social media management. So if you love the socials, why not turn that into a side hustle? Content creation for businesses, video editing, website creation, web design or graphic design, freelance writing or editing, being a virtual assistant for someone, being a handyman or handywoman. So basically, the boundaries are limitless. Think outside the box and do some research. And also think what skills you have and what skills can you learn. There's no stopping someone that's very determined. At the beginning, it might take a lot of courage to just start. But just remember, we don't have a spirit of fear or timidity. We have a spirit of courage. We can do this. And remember, friends, building that emergency fund can really save you from financial ruin. A lot of people that don't have emergency funds end up going into a lot of debt, for example, on their credit card or a quick loan. And usually those quick loans or credit cards are really high interest. It has this snowball effect where you're owning money and you're going to pay a lot of interest on that money and end up sitting with more debt.
You ready?
I don't think so.
Oh, come on. Cut. 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 Cut.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any personal stories to share regarding emergency funds, or if you feel that I've left out important information, please let me know in the comments below. Till next time.
Welcome to the real world. It sucks. You're gonna love it.
Well, they gaan nie werk. They're sick or because whatever. He's getting married or somebody's getting married. Somebody. So how much? How much emergency fund? Or this allows you to be prepared for emergency. Money hands, wealth hands. AS, baby. It shouldn't be the main goal. Which sounds more realistic. No unnecessary spending budget. So you could go on a no unnecessary spending budget. At the beginning, it might take you a lot of courage to just start. But just start, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Debt.